Welcome back to another episode of the Yellowhammer Sports Podcast. I am your host, CJ Duncan. Man, we had a great weekend of games last weekend. You know what? South Carolina took Alabama right down to the wire. Georgia handled business. Texas handled business. But then the nightcap, you had Tennessee struggling a little bit more. We'll see how that turns out this weekend coming up against Alabama. But then you see LSU pull off the upset against Ole Miss. And then my Commodores, we're still rolling. So a great slate of games last week. Looking forward to this weekend as well. But today we've got a very, very special guest for you. He's a Montgomery native, Auburn University graduate. While at Auburn, he was a second-team All-American, All-SEC linebacker. He is now the Senior Vice President of Governmental and Corporate Affairs at Alabama Power. He's the first African-American to hold a title pro tem of the Board of Trustees for Auburn University. He also does a lot of countless things in the community as well. Quentin Riggins, thank you so much for being here today. We appreciate your time.
Thank you, CJ. Glad to be here. Excited. I hear your excitement as you talk about your team, your school's success, and and as former ball players, and when we turn into fans, and you see your school have success, it feels good, and I love seeing it on your hearing it in your voice and seeing your face and hearing the expressions.
Well, you know what? Over the last, several years, I've been telling people this lately. We haven't had as much success as the Auburn and Alabama, my home state. So this year, they're making me very proud. So I appreciate y'all bearing with me during this time. But I like to think of you as Mr. Auburn. You literally have done it all at Auburn. Of course, you played there. You've done sideline reporting and now pro tem of the Board of Trustees. When do you remember developing this kind of passion for Auburn athletics? So, what was that while you were playing? Was that in high school? When did this start?
So, growing up and I started actually playing football in Montgomery in junior high, in seventh grade. I played at Georgia Washington, and in junior high or elementary, you play a lot of different positions. Yeah, I played a lot of different positions. Went on to Lee High School, played several positions there. And what ended up happening for me, I had a great football game against Enterprise High School. It was a game on the road my junior year. I wasn't really being recruited by a whole lot of folks. I didn't go to camps, anything like that. And Auburn was recruiting a running back by the name of Cedric Smith. And he ended up going on to University of Florida and being the fullback for Emmitt Smith. And he was a terrific running back. And I had one of those game of the lifetimes, and 20-something tackles, interception, caused fumble, a couple of different things. I was field goal kicker, kicked a couple extra points. And Auburn saw me, and they started recruiting me after that game. And so my very first game I ever went to going to my senior year was the Southwest Louisiana game, the first game of Bo Jackson's Heisman Trophy campaign. When you go up there and you see Bo, and he puts on a show, it's hard not to fall in love. So to answer your question, was when I went to the campus for the first time, saw him put on a show, I cannot fall in love with Auburn.
You know what? It's funny you say that. I have a very similar story. I did not become Mr. Auburn, but so of course, my mother being an Auburn graduate as well, I've heard so many stories about y'all's era at Auburn. But when I finally started getting recruited out of high school, one of my first visits at Auburn was when Cam Newton was the quarterback. And so I would like to imagine the electricity in the stadium that you felt with Bo was probably similar to what I experienced with Cam during that run, that that undefeated season Heisman run that he had.
Yeah.
I feel like it may have been very similar, and it was very hard to turn down Auburn during those days. I mean, it was just incredible out of body experience watching him play.
The thing that I remember, they whenever they would hand the ball off to them, toss sweep or whatever it might be, then you would see that end of the stands, people start standing up, and they try to make
Yeah,
sure that they didn't miss the play. And then
yeah,
you heard the oohs and the ahs and the cheers.
yeah,
And I don't know why I remember that, but you were just remember just the reaction of people. And you want to be the one to see it. And then I wanted to get home for Sunday, where they always had the coaches show,
hmm
Sunday afternoon, and you wanted to see the replay of what you just saw. And
yeah,
and so Bo, Cam, those guys, those generational talented guys come along, and you see them, and you're like, my goodness, or when I watched Jerry Rice, to me, the best wide receiver to play the game during that craft, you're like, man, that's a once in a lifetime generation. And those type guys, you try to learn as much about them, how they get this way, what's their routine, how what are the things that help them? Are they catching 100 balls a day? Are they waiting? What are they doing to separate themselves from other people? Because they're different. They have God-given talent and ability, but there's also there's a commitment that you have to make to maintain that separation from others. And we've seen some super talented people.
yeah. No, I think that's great. So while you were at Auburn and playing linebacker, you played for the legendary Coach Pat Dye,
Yeah.
arguably one of the best coaches in Auburn history. Do you have any story? I mean, I've heard so many stories, like I said, with just through family stuff, but do you have any stories of Coach Dye during those times? We'd love to hear more about that.
So I'll tell you one that I don't think people know about him. A lot of books have been written about him. Of course, he coached linebackers at Alabama, and so he learned a lot of off season training from time that he was up there with Bear Bryant and so forth, and he went out to Wyoming, different places, and he honed his craft. But I will tell you, as good as he was on the field, there were certain things he wanted you to know as a player about your teammate. So during game week, each Thursday, home game week, each Thursday and Friday, we have go through a regular breakfast, lunch, dinner schedule, but we also had what we call snack at 9 o'clock. And we'll come in and we'll have just light food, but stuff that you try to get your body, drink a bunch of Gatorade, stuff like that, build your body up for the weekend game. And but no coaches, just him and the players. And he would pick two seniors, and he would tell you different stories about those seniors, and how they got to Auburn, or what journey that they've had to travel, if they've had a bump in the road here or there, or if something they did stood out. He shared that. He told you different stories about those players, so you can know your teammate and know something unique or special about them. And I remember the story he told about me when I came up to that first game to see Bo Jackson. Long story short, I worked. As soon as I turned 16, my dad put me to work, and I worked at McDonald's. And so from the time I turned 16 to the time I went to college, they put me on night shift. I don't care if I had the only thing that I missed working is if it was game night. whether it's football or basketball. Otherwise, after practice, I'm in the car heading to work. And um, so when I went to my first game, that game to see Bo Jackson, um, I had to leave at halftime. And so when my host came up to go through itinerary, um, one of the things they talked about was post-game activities. And my dad basically said, we won't be here for that. And they're like, well, no, that's when you get to meet Coach Dye. That's when you get to meet the position coach, Reggie Herron, and get to meet the players and so forth. He said, well, he has to go to work and we're going to leave at halftime. And so, long story short, told my assistant coach that was recruiting me at the time. And then my host was a lady by the name of Missy Dye. And Coach Dye's oldest daughter. And so she was able to kind of get me in to see Coach during his pregame preparation. And Coach told that story about me having to kind of leave at halftime to go back to work, which I did. My dad made sure I went to work. And he talked about, this kid's first time coming to campus and having, experience that he of a lifetime, but he also had a commitment that his parents and he was going to honor. And that was one of the deciding factors of why Auburn was interested. I wasn't the tallest, wasn't the fastest. There were other players across the state that were bigger, faster. But what he wanted was a locker room guy that he thought would fit into what he was trying to build around the team. And that was hard work and commitment and so forth. So he told that story. And some of my teammates knew that, others did not. And so, but that was something that he wanted you to know. So hopefully that, you would share in success of your teammate. At the same time, you understand that journey along the way.
Yeah. Do you believe that his intent in sharing these stories, almost like testimonies in a sense, was a way to kind of galvanize everybody, to kind of set a culture within that locker room, just so it felt almost like a family experience?
Absolutely. If when he tells you a story about recruiting a kid out of Phoenix City, offensive lineman, and superstar guy by the name of Ed King, and he talks about him coming, and he, all he had was a duffel bag of clothes, a couple pair of jeans, mostly, sweats and athletic gear from his high school, Central Phoenix City High, and just like Vanderbilt and other schools, when you go on road trips, you have a dress code that you had to, go by. Ours was coat and tie, and the coach felt very strongly about it. But he told you the story so that if you saw your teammate who did not have a coat and tie, but he just had some jeans or some slacks and a button down, he told that story about it, so you understood that, hey, the reason why, he didn't get in trouble for not having a sport coat or a tie is this is what he came here with. And so they didn't tell the story to embarrass him. They didn't tell the story to, for any other purpose, but to help you understand we all come from different places.
For sure. Well, and when playing at that level, you have your own. You should be self-driven in a way, right? You're playing for something inside of you, wanting to be great, maybe wanting to play for your family or to move up in financially, whatever it may be. But also, when you hear those stories, coaches talk about the second and third effort. But, when you get to know your guys like that, it makes you play a little bit harder, makes you go a little bit harder, makes you do an extra rep, in the weight room or during off-season training when these guys, maybe this is all they got. and I want to do whatever I can. I want to do my job at the highest level so we can all be successful doing this. So I think that's really cool that Coach Dye did that. And I tell you what, he's got some of the coolest pictures you'll ever see with the button down shirt, the tie, the sports coat, and the ball cap. I kind of wish the coaches got back into that. Those are, to me, he looks like the coolest dude, to ever coach football in some of those pictures.
You know, the throwback gear,
Mm-hmm.
of the tall baseball caps,
Mm-hmm.
framed up and everything, and he'd have these like Snow White sneakers on that I think he just got out the box, and he was always he always had that look and standing right under the goalpost, and
Yes.
it's like um, he was ready for the moment, and
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
um,
Yeah.
um, I like to see that a little bit more. You know,
Yeah, that'd be nice. Yeah.
what do you see now? Coaches, they wear a little bit everything on the sideline.
Well, you saw Coach DeBoer got in trouble for wearing a t-shirt. So
I did not know that.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But some of the coaches, including the pro coaches, you'll see them in a sweatshirt. They'll have golf shirts. They have different things, but you don't see those coaches like Joe Paterno.
Hmm.
They have the white shirt, tie, and so forth. And I'm a traditionalist too, and I
Yeah.
love to see some of that as well.
Yeah, I think that I can't call his name right now, but the coach up in Minnesota, he kind of holds on to that a little bit as
Yeah,
well.
yeah,
But so we're all pretty familiar with the dual sport superstar myth that is Bo Jackson, that played at Auburn for all that time. But I think sometimes we forget about another dual sport athlete that actually played during your time. You entered into Auburn with this guy, the Big Hurt, Frank Thomas. Um, we know him to have finished a very Hall of Fame career in baseball. How was it with him on the football field? Tell us about Frank Thomas on Auburn's football field.
So Frank from Columbus, Georgia, and I remember meeting Frank. I remember our offensive line coach, tight end coach, James Daniels, recruited Central Alabama and also West Georgia, and so he signed in the same year. Frank Thomas, James Joseph, um, myself. He signed like seven guys from basically Montgomery all the way over to Columbus. And I remember I was a small 5'11", 190-pound linebacker. And I met Frank Thomas for the first time. And they asked me, hey, do you know what position he plays? I said, yeah, offensive line. I said, no, he's tight end. I was like, oh, man. And Frank at the time was 6'4", 220, 225. And I'm thinking, man, how can I play against this guy? But Frank was a tremendous athlete. We all thought we could play multiple sports. He'd go in the gym and he'd shoot threes, shooting deep shots out of the corner. And he told us one day, he said, "I'm a pretty good baseball player." Said, well, we all play baseball. He said, "No, I'm a
Right.
pretty good baseball player." So when the spring came, uh, Coach Dye and Coach Barrett, Hal Barrett was the baseball coach, let Frank go out and play baseball. And Coach Barrett knew all about Frank's baseball ability and skill, and it was clear he was bouncing off off the building about 50 yards past the fence. I mean, he could just slap the ball crazy. And Frank was a gifted tight end. It was during the time Auburn had a number of tight ends that were going professionally. And if Frank had played football, he would have played professional football easily. He was just so athletic and gifted, light on his feet. But he was smart. He went baseball, and he's had a terrific career. You know how you have teammates that go on and have tremendous success and so forth. Frank is the same guy. If you see him today, he is the same guy, personality wise, interaction wise, and so forth, as the guy that we met coming in to Sewell Hall back in 1986. He hadn't let the success, the money, the TV get to him and change who he is, and he is just a prince of a guy and
Wow.
a great teammate.
That's awesome to hear. That's awesome to hear. He's another one of those guys where you wonder if it's just this old camp fire story, or if it's really true. But it's good to hear that one, he was really that country strong, but also he's a really good guy.
And if you talk to anybody that played, like Auburn's athletic director John Cohen played against him, he was at Mississippi State, and you couldn't throw the ball by him. I mean, he just had a great feel for around the plate. Of course, he hit for power. He could hit either left, right. He'd take the pitcher wherever. If you pitch outside, he'll hit away. And he was just super talented all the way around. Had a great eye, great eye.
Awesome. Awesome. So, as a leader of Auburn's defense, you had the fortune of winning 4 straight Iron Bowls and 3 SEC championships. I would like to think people would call that the glory days. That doesn't happen very often in a 4 or 5 year span. In your opinion, right now, because I know you're still very engaged, very involved with the program, how does Auburn get back to those winning ways? And do you think Auburn's far off from those winning ways?
I think we're close. I don't care. I think you have to pay attention to. I'm old school. I think everything starts up front. I think everything starts with offensive, defensive line, and as you build your team, you build it around good super talent, but you also build them around depth. And you get that offensive line where you want it, you get that defensive line where you want it, then you just bring the pieces around it. A linebacker like me, a 208, 210-pound linebacker, I made plays, but I made plays because of Tracy Rocker, and there was an Outland Lombardi Trophy winner, Benji Rowland, Ron Stallworth. All those guys played in the NFL, and everything starts up front. And you look at what Georgia has done the last few years. You look what Alabama has been, what they've done the last decade. Everything starts up front, and then you can bring the skilled players around and plug and go. So that's where it starts.
Well, and you know what? I want you mentioned Tracy Rocker. I want to give Tracy and his son Kumar a shout out. Kumar is also a Vanderbilt Commodore, and he has been called up this year, or was called up prior to the playoffs beginning. So congratulations to the Rocker family. Because you are engaged, I also want your thoughts on the current state of NIL, or as some people like to say, pay to play, or pay for play. That feels a little bit more accurate. What are your thoughts on the direction of this situation?
I don't think we should be afraid of change in college sports. I think that if we look at what happened this past weekend in sports, there was just parity all across the board.
It was.
And, I think if you watch this upcoming basketball season, and watch out for like Rutgers. Rutgers hadn't been on everybody's radar screen for a while. It's all up there. It's going to be Michigan State, Duke, North Carolina. It's the blue bloods in that space, but they have 2 top 5 guys.
Yes.
And I think I just saw one of their guys, had a double 25 or something,
last night, Ron Harper Jr., he had 20 points. He's the starting point guard, and Ace Bailey had 25. And
Ace Bailey.
Yes, they're both And, Ron Harper played with Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant. And so you got those caliber guys now at Rutgers.
So think about this. To me, the NCAA basketball tournament is if you have a talented guard or senior oriented guard, and you can go a long way. And but again, you can go in a short period of time because of transfer portal or NIL, whichever, and build your team. Look at what happened a couple of years ago with LSU women's basketball program. They went and found a couple of pieces, they made a run, and they won. Now, I said earlier, I'm an old traditionalist guy. I'm old fashioned. I would love to go out like we did in the past and go recruit high school kids, go get your top 20, 25 kids, bring one on campus, and let's go get it. Mm-hmm. But today's game, things change. You got to change with them.
Yeah, you definitely do. And I'm glad you mentioned the high school kids. I think I saw this year where the NCAA has expanded the amount of scholarships, I think, at least for football, that they can have within a calendar year. Because I do think the high school kids were kind of getting left out in a sense, right? There were so many scholarships that would normally go to high school kids that were now being given to portal guys. And so I think there's ways it's not going to be perfect because it is changed. Things are moving forward. But I do think people are trying to make the efforts to make it as good as it can be for the student athlete. So I know once I was done with football, I reached out to you for guidance as a mentor, and it helped me a lot on my journey post being a student athlete. What is some advice you have for athletes that are trying to dominate that next phase of life after football?
So, great question. I tell athletes, don't feel lost when your career has passed or you've hung up your cleats or your baseball bat or your tennis racket or golf club for 4 years or so. You've had a schedule, and you're gonna go to weight room. You're gonna go to class, or you're gonna go eat, go to class, go to practice. Hit the books, and now you get to manage your own life, and you try to narrate or navigate the next phase of it. I think what you have to do is trust yourself. If you can learn, I always tell people, if particularly in sports, and people don't pay attention to this, the brilliance of athletes learning on the fly, being able to recognize what they practice all week, change, and build a plan either for offense or defense with about 10 seconds on the play clock. Mm-hmm. And you sit there and that quarterback barks out the cadence and the signal and the play. That linebacker and that safety are barking out their plays, and you're playing chess for 25 seconds, and you're given direction and guidance to 22 players on the field. You have the ability to learn. You're showing leadership skills. You're fighting through adversity at times. You're enjoying success at times. So now, just like you've shown a passion for the sport that you're in, and you pursued your dreams, now find out, hey, what's the next phase? What are you interested in? Is it being a coach? Is it being a doctor? Is it being a lobbyist? And then if it is, then just like you did your research and homework on the team that you're going to play, and you've looked at film, you've looked at tendencies, and you digest that, you do the same thing okay, here's how I want to be a doctor. Here's what I got to do. And so Greg Carr, who played linebacker at Auburn, who went on to play for the Pittsburgh Steelers for a number of years, and now is a very, very successful doctor, he did this. And so, and you find the field that you're interested in, and you go either back to your school or you go make connections with a former teammate to help you find that connection to that path. It takes work. It takes time.
It does,
It takes
yeah.
patience. And the one thing that you're not going to find the immediate answer at times. So you're going to have a little adversity. But when you're in that August heat running and sweating, there was a lot of adversity there too.
Right.
But you didn't quit,
Mm-hmm.
and you competed. And so when you get through, all of the fundamentals that got you through your sport translates. But you have to trust yourself that all the preparation that you put yourself through and getting ready for that game, getting ready for that next play, believe it or not, translates to your professional career.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And um, I heard those words from you, and have been doing my best to apply them ever since. So I definitely appreciate that. We both had the good fortune of hearing from Coach Saban the other night, and he told a lot of great stories. Even went into detail about different games. But what are some things that you kind of took away about, leadership and legacy, football, and just how it all kind of translates into the real world?
I think that I love the fact that he talked about hard work.
Mhm.
You know, the negative that you may hear, because he touched on this a little bit too, with the transport portal. Sometimes, kids think that grass is greener on the other side, and sometimes it's not. And and we have this microwave society at times in our sports field. And when we come in, like I came in and I was all state, and and I was player of the year Montgomery, 6A player of the year Montgomery, and I want to play. And when I got to campus, there was a guy named Kurt Crane. That's pretty damn good.
Mm-hmm.
Another linebacker named Edward Phillips. That's even better. And guess what? I sat my butt on the bench.
Yeah.
And so, and I had to work. Get in the weight room, work in the class, get my body from high school
Mm-hmm.
to college, where I could take the punishment of a big running back. And today, would that transport portal be out? Or would I stay and work through it? I like to think that I would work through it. And so I thought with Coach Saban's, some of the things he said was powerful when he spoke about those things and commitment and hard work and so forth. The game's changed. And the thing that I think the coaches have to be is, they got to do so much with these kids nowadays, and so forth. But I think the biggest thing is helping them understand that the things that you are pushing through today that are going to make you a champion on the field will also make you a champion off the field. And I think he said that he had over 600 kids that he's coached that's graduated.
Yes, that's true.
Out of all the things, a couple of things that stood out, but I think what I heard him talk about, he didn't boast or brag about all the championships they won. He talked about, Jalen Hurts, Tua, and the fantastic player and how they were able to get through that championship run. But he also talked about the kids that graduated that he's coached. And I thought that I was left more with his success off the field than on.
Absolutely. He's just, I mean, I left that space wanting to run through a wall. Honestly, I was like, tomorrow, 6 a.m., I need to get up, go run and do something. I need to do something. But I mean, he was fantastic. And like you said, he dropped so many gems on us the other night. But one that I took away, of course, what you said was held very strong as well. But he mentioned Derrick Henry, somebody who's a Heisman Trophy winner, somebody who has dominated the sport of football since he touched it, right? Even I'm sure back to Pee Wee, but even high school, I think he still has the Florida record in rushing, and he'll be a Hall of Famer. He may be our last 10,000 yard rusher in the NFL, just based on how offenses are created now. But he said that it would be the worst, day of camp, 100 degrees in Tuscaloosa, and it's a two-a-day or whatever it may be. And he said he would go and check in on all the players and see how they're doing, see where they are at, and are they still, each day making their way to their goals. And, a lot of players, have gotten accustomed to being like, woe is me, and even in this transfer portal system, I'm not playing, I'm not getting the touches I want, this, that, and the other. But somebody like Derrick Henry, he said he went up to him and Derrick Henry said, Coach, I'm just glad to be here. I'm just happy to be here. And I just thought that spoke very loud to me, that someone so accomplished, someone who, probably has the right to complain a little bit and just said, you know what, Coach, I'm happy to be here. I'm playing football at the University of Alabama, or I'm playing football in the SEC and wouldn't want to be anywhere else. And I think we all kind of approach our days that way. We are where our feet are, and we just realize, hey, we're fortunate to be here. We'd probably all be better off.
Exactly. And one of the things I try to help young athletes as they're chasing their dream, that if you're on a college campus, man, you've really done great.
Mm-hmm.
And if you take a second and think, there's so many people from your community that you have either inspired, that look up to you, that closely watch everything that you do. And because you've made it in their eyes, and they want to play for, or they want to be like, and sometimes you have to remind these kids that, it may not be the Dallas Cowboys, but if you're playing for University of Georgia, Tennessee, or Auburn, or Alabama, or University of Texas, and you're starting or you're second team, and that kid that's like 8 years old that's throwing that football in the backyard, they're calling your name probably. And when you're on TV and they don't get to go to the game, they get to see you come up and play. Everything that you do, they're trying to get that next level. So you're making an impact and you're influencing, whether you know it or not. And that took work to get there. Yeah. It takes a lot of work to stay there.
It does. It does. Well, before we let you get out of here, I can't let you leave without this last question here. Coach Saban kind of brought up his favorite moments, favorite games that he had. What was your favorite game as a linebacker for Auburn University?
Oh God. I'll say this. Playing against University of Florida, against Emmitt Smith in '89. Emmitt was the best back that we ever played against. And I don't know, CJ, I had a ton of tackles that game. and I ended up being like a national defensive player of the week. And it's going to be a plus 18 tackle game. Back then, Florida didn't throw the ball. So they ran left, right. I bet they gave the ball to Emmett like, 30, 40 times. I think I probably had 20 tackles plus.
Wow. That's unheard of.
And it was just one of those games. But it was easy
Yeah.
because I had to go 2 steps and he's right there. And a
Right.
couple times and I was eating grass and but probably playing Florida. And I have a lot of great respect for him, how he played the game. And he was a competitor. He was a competitor.
Wow. Well, it sounds like you need to find an old picture from that game and get that framed up. That's a legendary stat line right there now.
It's gonna be, if I find a picture from that game, it's gonna be a black and white. I promise you. It's gonna be old.
Well, thank you so much for your time. Oh man, you mean the world to me, and we loved having you here on the Yellowhammer Sports Podcast. And please feel free to come back anytime. We'd love to have you. For all of our listeners and viewers out there, please tune in again next week for another episode of the Yellowhammer Sports Podcast. You can follow us on all social platforms, including YouTube and all for all of our latest podcast updates. We'll see you next week.